Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Fem Naruto Acts Like Minato Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. I refuse. In that moment Namikaze Minato looked every inch the man who had defeated the Kyuubi. His gaze was glacial, the killer intent humming just beneath the surface of his skin, held in with an iron-willed restraint that made it all that much scarier. The village council almost reconsidered. Almost. Our decision stands, Hokage-sama. Even you cannot argue it. If she goes, I go. Minato replied, if you insist on this injustice then you can also find yourselves a new Hokage. Minato, it was Tsunade who spoke and he glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, not relaxing in the slightest. Think about what you're saying. There's nothing to think about. What you're asking of me is insanity. Minato roared. Tsunade and Jiraiya stepped closer, speaking to him low volumes so as not to be overheard. You need to stay here and do something about these idiots. Jiraiya spoke. This council needs to be dealt with and only you have the power to do that. I will not abandon her. Minato argued. You won't be, Tsunade replied. Jiraiya and I will go with her. She's strong, she'll be okay. She's 6 years old. Desperation glistened in Minato's eyes, was clear in his tone. Please. Think of what you're asking. That is why you need to be here, Jiraiya replied, hating that he had to be the voice of reason when he was wholly and completely on Minato's side. It's not forever, we'll bring her back. I promise you Minato. We'll bring her back. You have other duties, both of you do. You can't be with her all the time. Minato replied. He kept willing himself to wake up. Surely he was dreaming. This was his worst nightmare come to life. Minato, Tsunade spoke, her amber gaze bored into his own, well aware that they were asking Minato to hand over his life. You have to trust us. Not on this, the Yondaime shook his head, bangs swaying with the motion. Minato, Tsunade had to pause for a moment to swallow back her rage and frustration and sorrow. I would love nothing more than to set Orochimaru loose on every single one of these biased, prejudiced, senile old farts, but I can't. None of us can do anything to stop them, but you can. You can change this, you can make sure something like this never happens again. You can do that, but only if you stay in Konoha, if you keep the power of the Hokage. Minato's expression didn't change, his fury only intensifying. Jiraiya and Tsunade fell silent, having said all that they could. Some of the council members shifted impatiently but were quickly quietened by glares from the Sannin. It seemed like forever, but, finally, Minato gave his answer before turning and striding from the chamber, fury still written in every line of his body. His eyes, normally, sparkling with laughter, were void of emotion, and fear made most people scramble out of the way of their normally affable Hokage. Fine. Tsunade and Jiraiya exchanged glances as some of the council were noticeably smug. He had agreed. Oh, 6-year-old Namikaze Naruto was scared. A normal 6-year-old might have clung to her father, clutching at his clothes and refusing to let go. As it was, Naruto was a genin and, inexperienced as she was, had enough training to swallow down her fear and not embarrass herself in front of the council representatives. Naru, her father whispered as he knelt down to her level, you're going to be okay, Angel. I know, she tried to summon up a smile. Tsunade Ba-chan and Ero Sennin will be there. I'll be fine, Papa. Remember, try not to visit any of the hidden villages and stay as far away from Iwa as possible. Minato said, trying his damnedest not to cry. I know. Naruto actually did manage a smile at this, albeit a small one. Minato returned the smile, eyes glistening with unshed tears as he stroked her hair away from her face. I'm going to miss you, Angel. He said. Don't be sad, Papa, Naruto said, winding thin arms around his neck in a hug. I'll be back before you know it, and I'll be the strongest ninja in Konoha, except for you. But I may even be stronger than you. Oh Naru, Minato sighed, one day, you're going to be much stronger than I am. He sighed and let his hand fall to her shoulder, just, be very careful. Don't linger on the roads and trust your instincts. Listen to Jiraiya and Tsunade and just be very, very careful. I will, Papa, Naruto said, her small arms tightening around his neck. Minato wrapped his arms around his daughter and hugged her to him, closing his eyes and trying to forget that this might be the last time he saw her, to restrain himself from turning around and swiping the heads off of every single one of those smug, vile bastards on the council. Taking a deep breath, Minato reminded himself that what he had planned for them was much, much more satisfying than just killing them. His grip on his daughter tightened and, for a moment, he wished he could just go to sleep and wake up 10 years from now. It was only when Naruto was walking away from Konoha, alone and so very, very small, only Minato knew Jiraiya and Tsunade were shadowing her because this was supposed to be an exile, that he realized the front of his vest was damp. Naruto had cried. Oh, 8-year-old Naruto was terrified. Tsunade and Jiraiya were chasing down a lead-on Orochimaru and Naruto had been left in a nearby village. It was a civilian village far from any of the hidden villages, and Naruto's skills had improved from Genin to mid-Chunin over the past 2 years, and so nobody had felt uncomfortable leaving her alone for a couple of days. That was then, before she had run into him. He was Naruto's age and her height. He wasn't wearing a Hitai-8, but the way the sand was swirling around him suggested he was exceptionally skilled at using chakra. A large gourd was strapped to his back and his eyes were rimmed by dark circles and glossy with more than a hint of insanity. And to think, an hour ago he was merely scary, but as their fight progressed the psychosis had developed and now Naruto feared she was facing a true madman. Her chest heaved as she struggled to draw in oxygen. Her arms and legs were covered with cuts, and as the boy ranted on and on about his mother and proving his existence, Naruto found that she was sick and tired of being scared. It seemed like she'd spent the past 2 years in fear and she was sick of it. She was an 8-year-old, Chunin level kunoichi. She was the jailer of the 9-tailed fox, the most powerful of the tailed beasts. She was the daughter of the Yondaime Hokage, the most powerful ninja ever. She was Namikaze Naruto, and she was sick and tired of being scared and nervous and bullied by maniacal boys with freaky talents. Naruto closed her eyes and took a deep breath. From the way this boy was talking, she was certain that he was a Jinchuriki. He'd called himself a monster. Well, the monster was about to be introduced to the bigger monster. She opened her eyes and the normally cerulean orbs were tinged with red. It was time someone taught this boy a lesson. Oh, the sunset was lost on Minato. He stood on the balcony outside his office, gaze unseeing as his thoughts wandered. His paperwork was done, he had heard back from all returning teams and, in truth, there was nothing keeping him at the office. Still, his home felt too large and too empty these days, and not even Ichiraku's could tempt him. Tsuki's knowing and sympathetic gaze would only weigh on his shoulders, so Minato vaulted easily over the balcony, landing on the street below with barely a sound before he took to the rooftops once again. The training grounds it was. Only physical exertion could help him forget, if temporarily, the gaping hole in his heart that would only truly be filled when his daughter was returned to him safe and sound. Oh, 10-year-old Namikaze Naruto was frustrated. Her brow furrowed, tongue peeking out between her lips as she glared at the misshapen ball of chakra that was threatening to explode in her hands. Beads of perspiration ran from her hairline, down the side of her face, following the line of her jaw before continuing the path down her neck and into the thin woolen top she was wearing. The blindingly blue ball of chakra swirled violently in her hand. She had been practicing the Rasengan for almost 4 weeks now and had mastered the first 2 steps easily enough. The third and final step, however, was proving more difficult. She gritted her teeth in an effort to control the pulsing energy as she felt it fight for release. Her chest heaved with the exertion even as she felt her control slipping. In vain she tried to wrestle back control, her determination so strong that, had she thrown the ball away from her a moment later, it would have been a moment too late. The incomplete Rasengan exploded mid-air, creating a small gust of wind that blew Naruto's bangs away from her face but did nothing to dislodge her scowl. Damn it all to hell. The girl cursed, stamping her foot in frustration. Why the hell couldn't she get this? Naruto huffed, crossing her arms and glaring at the spot where the wannabe Rasengan had exploded into thin air. She'd never had such difficulty with a jutsu before. Yes, Rasengan was her father's creation, and yes, he was the most brilliant ninja to have ever lived, but still. She was a quick learner and she had picked up the first 2 steps in record time. What the hell was up with the third? Wow, it looks like an entire war took place here, Jiraiya whistled as he sauntered into the clearing. Still haven't mastered it, brat. He grinned. Shut up, Ero Sennin, Naruto grouched, crossing her arms across her chest and huffing loudly as she sat down on a nearby rock. Not so cocky now, huh? Jiraiya smirked. I told you it was a powerful jutsu. You also told me you'd treat me to ramen, Naruto snorted. I'm still waiting, Ero Sennin. Tell you what, Jiraiya grinned. Master the Rasengan and I'll make good on our deal. Yeah right, that's what you said when we started learning water jutsus, 3 months ago. Naruto grumbled, but she picked herself off of the ground, nonetheless, and continued training with little more than a roll of her eyes. Oh, she twisted easily in the air, one leg swinging out to deliver what would have been a devastating kick to the crook of his neck. Zabuza vaulted easily out of the way and Naruto landed on both feet, blue eyes narrowing in a glare. Her heart was thumping loudly in her chest. Momochi Zabuza, formerly one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, was way out of her league, and Naruto was certain that she was about to get her ass handed to her, but there was no way she was just walking away from this fight. The bastard had called Haku a tool, and treated him like a slave. It was unforgivable. With a snarl, Naruto raced forward once more. Someone needed to teach this overgrown freak how to treat his subordinates properly. Oh, she was on fire. Her entire body burned and her mouth opened in a scream that echoed through the woods, scaring the local birds into flight. Naruto's back arched, her hair escaping the confines of its band and splaying wildly in the wind generated by the chakra backlash. Her eyes were tinted red, the slitted pupils dilating and her scars thickening as the Kyuubi protested with all its might. Chakra flamed around her, a malicious red cloak, searing hot and clearly visible from miles around. Thankfully Tsunade and Jiraiya were the only people in the forest, specifically chosen for its isolation. They watched with grim faces as Naruto's body convulsed, her screams growing steadily hoarser before eventually dying out simply because her vocal cords were too abused to produce sound, and still the Kyuubi's chakra pulsed and rolled around her, her fingers lengthening into claws before retracting, her eyes fading from red to blue and back again, her own chakra a blinding blue cloak held tight against her body as she fought off the Kyuubi's influence. Naruto's skin burned, her muscles tearing, her tears evaporating even as they formed, and all Tsunade and Jiraiya could do was watch and pray and thank God that Minato did not have to watch his daughter go through this. Oh, another one, Kakashi. Minato sighed. That's the 4th year in a row. Sensei, Kakashi replied, his brain working overtime to think up a decent explanation and failing. Those brats are not ready to become ninja. They're undertrained and lazy and have no concept of teamwork. And to think, Minato's voice was mild, there was a time you kids were genin level almost before you could walk. Itachi, yourself, Minato's voice drifted off and his gaze drifted to the view from his window as he sighed once more in lieu of finishing the thought. Kakashi's gaze softened and he bit down on his lip. The past 8 years had been hard on Minato, he was thinner and more somber, prone to gazing off into the distance, and, in those moments, the entire village knew who was on his mind. Naruto. Nay, sensei, Kakashi eventually said, she'll be back soon. I know, Kakashi, Minato sighed, I know. I can't shake the feeling that something is not quite right, that Naru is in trouble. Tsunade and Jiraiya are with her, nay. Kakashi only half-asked, and you know, from their reports, just how much Naruto-chan has grown. Between the three of them, there is little to be truly wary of. I know that, too. Minato nodded, but the tension in his shoulders did not ease, nor did the frown between his eyes, and Kakashi took the cue to silently make his exit. He couldn't pretend to understand a father's concern, but, for the sake of his sensei, Kakashi sincerely hoped it was just natural paternal worry. He feared the consequences should Naruto fail to return to the village safe and healthy. It went without saying that Konoha was a large city. As the trade and political capital of Fire Country, it also stood to reason that it was a city that saw a lot of traffic and tourism. Most people, however, did not wait for visitors to arrive at midnight, nor did they stand so rigidly at such an ungodly hour. Minato, however, was not most people. And so that was they seen Izumo and Katetsu arrived to when they reported for guard duty at midnight. The Chunin exchanged uneasy glances. With the breeze rustling his hair and causing his coat to billow gently behind him, broad shoulders taut and back ramrod straight, the Hokage cut a very intimidating picture. Izumo, Katetsu, the Hokage greeted his subordinates. I believe that you have about a minute to relieve the current guards before you're officially late for work. That got the desired results, and the two ninja hurried to the offices built into the gate itself, unwilling to be caught slacking in their boss's presence. Were it any other day, Minato would have smirked and shared a few jokes with the younger men to put them at ease. As it was, his mind was too preoccupied with what-ifs to put much effort into reassuring others. There was so much that could go wrong. He had received a letter from Naruto not even 2 days ago, saying she was well and stating her intention to arrive as soon as it was a minute into the day her banishment ended. Minato wholeheartedly agreed with her agenda. 10 years was too long a time spent apart to delay Naruto's return by even a moment. As if on cue, a figure appeared on the horizon, distinguishable only as a blob of dark clothes and blonde hair. Izumo and Katetsu stiffened as they spotted the person, glancing at the Hokage but not being able to read his reaction to such an unexpected sight. Or perhaps, given that he was waiting in front of the gates at such an ungodly hour, the Hokage was expecting this visitor. But who on earth? Izumo's eyes widened with realization and he elbowed his friend and colleague. What? Katetsu hissed, his frame tense with expectation. It's been 10 years, Izumo said, and Katetsu rolled his eyes. I know it feels like we've been working together forever, Katetsu said, but it hasn't been that long. Now focus. Idiot. Izumo punched the other man on the shoulder. It was 10 years ago that Namikaze Naruto was banished. Oh, Katetsu's eyes widened in realization and drifted to where the Hokage was trying to imitate a statue, his daughter. He trailed off, gaze drifting towards the rapidly approaching figure. It was only moments before she was close enough for details about her appearance to become visible, and Katetsu's jaw almost dropped. The girl who approached was easily one of the most gorgeous he'd ever seen, and he worked with Anko and Kurenai. Her hair was long and the same brilliant gold in color as her father's, falling to her knees in loose, glossy curls. She was tall, with moderate curves that were enhanced by the navy blue dress she wore, the skirt of which was almost indecently short. The V-neck of the dress dipped tantalizingly low, revealing a hint of mesh undershirt. A belt was slung low across her hips, holding scrolls and other supplies. Strapped to one shapely, toned thigh was a kunai pouch, the presence of which only confirmed that this girl was as dangerous as she was beautiful. She wore flat black boots that stopped just above her ankles, and the sleeves of her dress were thick straps that exposed the muscled curve of her shoulders as it disappeared into equally well-shaped arms. She wore wrist-length gloves with metal protectors, and completing her outfit was a short, sleeveless white vest, with no zip that fell to her waist and had a flame pattern stitched across the bottom, an obvious tribute to the cloak her father wore. Naruto, the Hokage whispered as he caught sight of his daughter for the first time in 10 years. Naruto, who was aware that they were being watched and had been trying to retain some measure of decorum, heard the greeting thanks to her enhanced senses. She froze, eyes widening as they met her father's and her breath stuck in her throat. In an instant her eyes catalogued the changes a decade had wrought. There were fine lines at the corners of his eyes and he seemed paler, as if he had spent all his time indoors. Other than that, there were few physical signs that her father had aged. Naruto, Minato spoke again, louder this time as he took a step forward. As if she had been waiting for that exact signal, Naruto broke from her trance. Shaking her head for a moment before darting forward with a speed the Chunin could never hope to follow. Minato easily caught her as she barreled into him, arms going around his daughter as his heart swelled. He thought this day would never come. Azumo and Kotetsu quietly retreated into the guardhouse, feeling as if they'd already intruded too much on what was such a private moment, but neither father nor daughter paid them much heed. "Daddy," Naruto whispered, burying her face in her father's neck as tears pricked her eyes. There'd been times when she thought she'd never see home again, and now that she was here, well, relief and joy and a sudden surge of affection for the man hugging her as if his life depended on it swelled within her, blocking her vocal cords. Naruto didn't know how long they stood there, but soon they were making their way home. Home. It was such a powerful word. People say home is where the heart is, and Naruto thought that that was only partially true. Bits of her heart were scattered all over the world. She had friends and people precious to her in every corner of the shinobi nations, but Konoha would always be home, and only partially because it was where her father lived. Konoha was where she first learned the ninja arts. It was where she would beat Kakashi at laps around the village despite the fact he was older than her. It was where she would practice taijutsu with Maida Guy until she could barely walk and the Jonin would have to carry her home, desperately hoping the Hokage wouldn't catch him bringing his daughter back in such a state. It was where Ichiraku Tsuki let her taste test his new recipes. It was the only place in the world where, in the autumn, the leaves turned that particular shade of gold-tinged russet brown. Konoha was where her happiest and saddest memories lay. It was also where the bedroom she decorated as a 6-year-old lay untouched except to be kept clean. Naruto's eyes wandered over the yellow walls, one of which sported a massive motif of the Uzumaki spiral in orange, a tribute to her mother. The bed was still dressed in the white silk bed linen embroidered with tiny yellow daisies she'd loved as a child, and matching curtains were pulled wide open at the window, letting the moonlight filter into the room. Everything was the same, from the collection of stuffed animals and oversized cushions that were arranged in one corner of the room, to the scroll-on chakra manipulation that lay open on her nightstand, a subject with which she was now intimately acquainted. Unstrapping her kunai pouch and belt, Naruto left them on the animal-themed dresser, resolving to redecorate as soon as she could, and made her way back to the kitchen where her father was brewing a pot of tea. Being back in this house caused nostalgia to well up inside her, and she held in a sigh. "You look thinner," Naruto noted as she slipped into a chair. "Have you been skipping meals?" "Of course not, Naru-chan," Minato replied, his eyes curving into a smile as he set down the tea and retrieved 2 cups. "When have I ever skipped meals?" "All the time if I remember correctly," Naruto grinned. "I learned how to cook though. No more disregarding your health, okay?" "Okay." Minato's gaze softened and he reached over to ruffle her hair. "Whatever you say, Naru-chan." He took a sip of his tea before continuing. "Where did you learn to cook? Please don't tell me Tsunade-san taught you." "No, of course not," Naruto laughed. "Granny can burn water. There's this little village in tea country where we spent some time, and a man lives there, Ui Takahashi, who is the best chef in the entire world. He taught me how to cook in exchange for self-defense lessons for his daughter." How old were you then?" Minato asked, and the two fell into easy conversation, catching up on the minutiae of each other's lives over the past decade. Before they knew it, The sun had risen and it was time for Minato to go to work. Father and daughter walked through the village, arms linked as they watched Konoha awaken. Only the early birds were out and about and almost everyone greeted the Hokage with a wave and a smile. Naruto was met with curious looks. She'd been sheltered as a child, people feared her status as a Jinchuriki but feared Minato's anger should harm come to his daughter even more. News of her banishment had provoked mixed feelings within Konoha. On the one hand, it was better if she learned to control her Biju somewhere far away where she posed no threat. On the other, she was only 6 years old. Talented as Naruto was, nothing good could come off of sending a 6-year-old out into the world to fend for herself. Now that she was back, older and reeking of confidence, well, that could only be a good thing, right? So what do you have planned for today? Naruto asked, following her father into the tower. Are you meeting with the council? Can I sit in? Thankfully no council meetings today, Minato chuckled. They'll be spared your exuberance and I'll be spared a headache. A headache, Papa? Naruto pouted. I see you for the first time in 10 years and you call me a headache. I feel so loved. Minato's grin widened and he laughed out loud when Naruto feigned annoyance, huffing and crossing her arms over her chest with exaggerated motions. Unable to help himself, he threw an arm across her shoulders, marveling once more at how tall she'd gotten. Kushina had been slight, a disadvantage she'd made up for with her speed, agility and the sheer force of her personality. Minato himself was tall, with broad shoulders and long legs. Naruto seemed to take after him physically. Reaching his jaw, she was slender and graceful, moving with an ease that suggested extreme comfort in her own skin. And as a blue-eyed blonde with tanned skin, Naruto even had Minato's coloring. Her personality though, that was all Kushina. Minato could see echoes of his deceased wife in the wide curve of Naruto's grin, in the mischievous sparkle in her eyes, in the way she found joy and amusement in the smallest of things, in her slightly sarcastic sense of humor and in her razor-sharp wit. For a moment, Minato was seized with a fierce sense of loss as he realized just how much of his daughter's life he had missed out on. Hokage-sama, a voice greeted as they entered the mission hall and father and daughter turned in unison to find themselves faced with a Chunin. He was a few years older than Naruto, with a scar across his nose and long hair pulled into a ponytail. Iruka, Minato greeted, his smile broad and bright. Good morning. Morning, Hokage-sama. Iruka glanced between Minato and Naruto, his hesitation obvious. Naru, Minato placed a hand on his daughter's back and ushered her forward a little. This is Yumino Iruka, one of our academy teachers who also helps out around here during the school breaks. Pleased to meet you, Yumino-san. Naruto smiled and saw that the confusion didn't completely leave the Chunin's expression and so she turned to her father. Can I watch you assign missions, Papa? She asked. I can get to see all the new shinobi that way. Of course, Naru-chan. Minato slung his arm around Naruto's shoulders and beamed down at her, missing the surprise that flittered briefly across Iruka's features. It's the best way to let everyone know you're back. And so the Namakazes made their way into the room and Minato took his seat, Naruto perching easily on the armrest of his chair. Iruka stood to Minato's left, a sheath of papers in his hand and the guards at the doors started letting people in. Unsurprisingly, Maeda Guy and his team were the first in line. Good morning, Hokage-sama. Guy greeted at his usual volume, one that was akin to a sonic boom. It is truly a beautiful day. Yes, Guy, it is, Minato agreed and gestured to his daughter. You may remember Naruto. Hey Guy. Naru waved and Konoha's green beast froze in place, his eyes almost bulging out of their sockets. Naruto-san. To everyone's horror, Guy's eyes filled with tears. You have returned. Your flames of youth must burn brightly indeed for you to have returned to us after all these years. This is a cause for celebration, Lee. Let us do 50 laps around Konoha. Guy-sensei. Lee emoted. I do not know why we are celebrating, but I shall be most honored to do 50 laps. Oh geez. 1010 exhaled, blowing her bangs out of her eyes. Here we go again. Guys found a mini guy. Naruto turned to her father in horror. How could you let this happen and, more importantly, why didn't you warn me? Now Naru-chan, Minato's eyes curved with the force of his smile. They're not that bad. Not that bad, Naruto echoed, her gaze traveling towards the spandex-clad duo and resting on them for a fraction of a moment before she was looking away in horror. Is that a genjutsu, Kai? Naruto's eyes widened as the soul-scarring scene refused to dissipate. Kai. She tried again. Kai. Don't bother. 1010 sighed. Not even Kurenai-san can get rid of it. I'll take our mission assignment, Hokage-sama, Neji said, accepting the piece of paper from Iruka as 1010 grabbed Lee and Guy by their collars and proceeded to drag them out of the room. Okay, Minato replied. When Guy calms down, tell him to come see me, Neji. Neji nodded his understanding and followed the rest of his team out, unaware that Naruto's eyes narrowed as she watched him leave. That's Hiashi-san's son? Naruto asked and Minato nodded, his smile dimming a little. Yes, Minato said. Hyuga Neji, a certified prodigy. Before Naruto could reply, another team was approaching and mission assignments took priority. Over the next few hours, Naruto's presence in relation to Minato had to be explained to almost every genin team and even some of the chunin. By the time lunchtime approached, Naruto was at her wit's end. Honestly, she complained. How hard can it be to tell I'm your daughter? Everyone knows about the exile and I call you, Papa, for God's sake. 10 years is a long time, Namikaze-san, Iruka spoke. People have gotten used to you being gone and it's going to take them a while to get accustomed to you being back in Konoha. I suppose. Naruto frowned, but it softened when Minato reached out a hand to ruffle her hair. It would take her at least a month to get annoyed at being treated like she was still 6 years old. I haven't seen Kakashi yet, Papa, Naruto said after a moment. Does he have a mission away from the village? Iruka coughed to hide his snicker and Minato's smile was knowing, causing Naruto's brow to furrow in confusion. What aren't you telling me? She asked. Oh, nothing, Naru-chan, nothing, Minato grinned. In fact, I think I hear Kakashi now. Naruto opened her mouth to refute his statement since, even at 12, Kakashi had been one of the stealthiest people she knew. 10 years would only improve his skills. Before she could do so, however, a voice shrill enough to cause everyone in the vicinity to wince pierced through the room. Sigh, you pervert. Haruno Sakura hit her teammate on the head as they entered the mission hall. Don't say things like that in a lady's presence. I don't see any ladies around, hag, Sai retorted and he ducked to avoid another punch from Sakura. You rude, immature, annoying jerk. Sakura shrieked, gearing up for one of the infamous Sakura, Sai tirades. Naruto had other plans. Somebody please pass me earmuffs, she spoke, causing all Team 7's attention to swivel towards her except for Kakashi, who had his head buried in a book. Well, that just wouldn't do. I never thought I'd see the day you took on a genin team, Hitaki. Naruto smirked and it deepened as Kakashi's head snapped up, his visible eye widening in surprised recognition as he spotted her. And I never thought that when you did it would be one composed of loud brats. Naruto. Kakashi's disbelief colored his voice as he ignored her last statement. Is that you? In the flesh. Naru beamed then. Before anyone could blink, she had vaulted over the table and thrown her arm around Kakashi, her first and best friend, who immediately returned the hug. Why didn't you let me know what time you were arriving at? Kakashi asked as they broke apart. I would have met you at the gate. I wanted to surprise you, Naruto smiled. And also, you would have told everyone and they'd all would have waited up. Welcoming committees are embarrassing. I don't think it would have been a bad idea, Minato spoke. Maybe we could still throw a welcome back party for you, Naru. Please don't. Naruto quickly vetoed that idea. I'd prefer to catch up with everyone individually. But, Naru-chan, I haven't been able to throw you a party in years, Minato tried to wheedle. I know that, Papa, but I hate parties. Naruto crossed her arms over her chest and tried not to feel guilty about saying no to her father. Wait, Papa, Sakura spoke, unable to contain herself. Beside her, Sasuke and Sai perked up, their expression sharpening. Why are you calling the Hokage, Papa? Geez, Kakashi. Naruto winced at the volume of Sakura's voice, but only Minato and Kakashi knew she was exaggerating. You really shouldn't let the little harpy get away with being so loud. Little harpy. Sakura rose to the bait, missing the way her teammates smirked. Who the hell are you to call me that? Namikaze Naruto, at your service, Naru replied with obvious sarcasm. Namikaze. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Weren't you exiled? I was, but now I'm not. Naruto grinned briefly but didn't elaborate, enjoying their confusion. Do you want to come with us today, Naru? Kakashi asked before turning to Minato. That would okay, right sensei? It's fine by me, Minato replied. Actually, Naruto's smile was a little rueful. I wanted to have lunch with Papa. I'll find you afterwards, is that okay? Sure Naru. Kakashi grinned under his mask, his visible eye curving with the motion, and he drew her into another quick hug. And welcome back. We missed you. The wind picked up her hair, blowing it behind her in a river of gold. Naruto smiled, tilting her face up towards the sky and leaning back to lie against the tiles of the roof. It was a glorious morning, made all the more so because she was spending today with Kakashi. Naruto had been home for a full week and it still felt like she had returned only yesterday. A lot had happened in that week. Her father had officially announced her return to Konoha and also made it public news that she was no longer the jailer of the nine-tailed fox. Naruto, with a bit of help from Jiraiya, had managed to modify the seal and allow for faster assimilation of the Kyuubi's chakra. Breaking the news to Konoha as a whole was a decision Naruto was fully behind and turned out to be the correct one. Nobody could accuse her of being unstable now. Drawing in a deep breath, Naruto inhaled the smells of home in the morning. There was the jasmine that was the pride of the groundskeeper's garden, and there was also an undercurrent of pine. The coniferous trees were particularly abundant in Konoha, and nowhere else on the hidden continent carried quite the same smell. There was also a rather delicious, albeit man-made smell that instantly caused Naruto's stomach to growl and her grin widened. Porridge. Slipping back in through her bedroom window, Naruto practically skipped downstairs. Porridge was her absolute favorite breakfast food but could only really be found in the hidden villages, and Naruto had spent 10 years avoiding those at every turn. Also, nobody cooked porridge quite like her father. Morning Naru. Minato grinned as his daughter bounced into the room. Morning Papa. Naruto beamed, dropping a kiss on his cheek before crossing to the stove to fill a bowl with nutritious, creamy goodness. You're in a good mood, Minato noted, grinning as Naruto sprinkled blueberries and strawberries into her breakfast until there was almost more fruit than porridge. I'm spending the day with Kakashi. Naruto returned the smile as she hopped onto the counter instead of sitting on a chair. I can't wait. The lazy ass barely wrote me at all when I was away. We have so much to catch up on. I'm sure, Minato replied, just don't forget we're going to Asuma's house for dinner. It wouldn't do be late. Please, when am I ever late? Naruto scoffed, swinging her legs as she ate. I can't wait for that either. I missed Asuma-san, he's another one that was too lazy to write. As long as you don't say that to his face, Minato grimaced. Why not? Naruto raised her eyebrows in question as she hopped off the counter and rinsed out her bowl. It's true. You haven't changed at all, Naru-chan. Minato tried to sound stern but it mostly came out affectionate. You're still a tactless brat. Hey, a bit of honesty never hurt anyone, Naruto winked. But I gotta go now. Kakashi told his team he's meeting them in 20 minutes and I intend to hold him to that. I'll bet he'll love that. Minato laughed, ruffling Naruto's hair as she passed him on her way out and taking the opportunity to also drop a kiss onto the top of her head. Have fun. Naruto waved and grinned at him over her shoulder, and then the door was slamming shut behind her and Minato was left staring at a piece of wood with a soft smile on his face. His daughter might have grown in height, but she was still his little girl, and the moments where she was little more than a mischievous blur of energy proved it. Shaking off his nostalgia, Minato slung his cloak over his shoulders and strode out of the house. Hopefully the day would pass without Naru and Kakashi doing irreparable damage. Those two could be a force to be reckoned with. Waving to Guy as he sped past her on his, well, she shuddered to think how many laps around the village he had already done. Naruto hummed softly under her breath. It was a beautiful day and she was going to spend it with her oldest friend. It didn't hurt that Kakashi was hot as hell. 10 years ago he had been a lanky 12-year-old that towered over her in a highly annoying way. Now he was a tall, broad-shouldered 22-year-old that towered over her in the best possible way. Also, those Jonin uniforms he wore were the best invention ever because they were a little fitted. When you had legs like Kakashi's, fitted was very, very good. Jiraiya's books were detailed and graphic, and Naruto couldn't help but imagine what it would be like to try out some of the stuff he wrote about with someone as attractive as the copy nin. Shaking the lecherous thoughts from her head because it was just wrong to think of her friend in that way, Naruto grinned broad and bright when she spotted Kakashi standing at the memorial stone. He would undoubtedly have picked up on her chakra signature by now, so she wasted no time on stealth. Instead, Naruto ran, with enough speed to generate a soft breeze, and jumped onto his back. Her arms went around his neck and her legs wrapped around his waist, and still Kakashi barely even blinked. Naru, Kakashi turned his head so that he could glance at her. You're heavy. Then you're out of shape, Naruto pouted, put off by the unexpected greeting. And you're also gonna be late. It's not nice to keep your students waiting, you know. Kakashi glanced at her again, his lips curving into a smile beneath his masks. If I remember correctly, you called one of those same students a harpy. Do you really think you should be telling me how to treat them? I was only playing with her, Naruto scoffed. Besides, I can't believe you let your genin go around being so loud. Haven't you taught them stealth? I don't need to, Kakashi replied. Sakura can be quiet when she needs to be. She's a genin, how often does she need to be quiet? Naruto asked, resting her chin on Kakashi's shoulder and lifting her arms out in front of her. Her nail polish was chipped. Kakashi turned his head to look at her, amusement clear in his visible eye, but Naruto just shrugged, not in the least bit bothered by her current position. Neither was Kakashi, if he were completely honest with himself. The training grounds weren't far from the memorial stone and Naruto really wasn't all that heavy. Not for him anyway. Besides, it felt nice to carry her. His hands rested on her legs, feeling the deceptive strength there even through the material of his gloves, and her breasts were squashed against his back. Her hair was unbound, some of it falling forward and tickling the side of his face, and, from this close proximity, Kakashi could make out the clean, sharp scent of the soap she used. No, he wasn't slightest bit bothered by her current position. Kakashi. A female voice spoke, breaking through his thoughts, and, as one, Naruto and Kakashi turned their heads to look at the speaker. Kurenai, Kakashi greeted, ignoring the three gaping genin that were accompanying her. He made no move to introduce Naruto or acknowledge their blatant shock as seeing him carrying a fellow ninja when she obviously uninjured. Rude, Naruto scolded, poking his sharply in the ribs, and, in retaliation, he let go of her legs, hoping to drop her. Instead, Naruto slid easily off his back and stepped around him to smile at the newcomers. Good morning, Kurenai-san, she greeted. Please forgive my friend's rudeness. I've heard he's not used to actually being awake in the mornings. I'm Namikaze Naruto, and you must be the new Jonin I've heard so much about. Yuhi Kurenai, And welcome back Namikaze-san. The older woman smiled, instantly charmed by Naruto's politeness while Kakashi barely refrained from rolling his eyes. Sure, Naruto was all sugar and spice, but then you actually got to know her. This is my team, Kurenai continued, Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata and Inuzuka Kiba with his companion, Akamaru. Why do you have the same surname as the Hokage? Kiba asked as Shino and Hinata mumbled their greetings. He's my father, Naruto replied, trying not to get too annoyed at the question. She'd met most of the village's ninja yesterday, but it was inevitable that some were out of the village or had taken training days. Still, you'd think they'd know such recent history. No way. Kiba's disbelief was evident. The Hokage has a daughter. How come we've never seen you before? Kiba. Kurenai instantly scolded before turning to Naruto with an apologetic smile. Pardon him, Namikaze-san, Kiba sometimes forgets his manners. It's no problem, Naruto assured, and to answer the question, I've been out of the village for a long time. We really must be going now. She linked her arms with Kakashi. I wanted to make sure Hitaki was on time for once. It was nice to meet you, though. Goodbye Namikaze-san, see you around Kakashi. Kurenai waved as Naruto dragged Kakashi away, seemingly unaware of the unimpressed stare the copy nin was bestowing upon her. You don't have to pull so hard, you know, Kakashi said as Kurenai and her team became blobs of color in the background. I think you've dislocated something. Oh, shut up, you big wuss, Naruto stuck her tongue out at him. I only hurt your pride. Nope. Definitely feeling something dislocated, Kakashi teased, making a show of prodding at his shoulder. Naruto merely grinned at him. Even after 10 years, she knew that the joke was Kakashi's way of saying he didn't mind her teasing him in front of his friends. It was a good thing too, because Naruto liked teasing Kakashi. Her friend smiled back at her, his visible eye curving with the motion, and Naruto linked their fingers together, swinging their joint hands as they approached the training grounds. Sensei. Sakura sounded awestruck, you're on time. Ma, a leech started clinging to me and woke me up, Kakashi explained. A leech. Sakura's brow scrunched in confusion and her gaze flitted from Kakashi's bored visage to where Naruto was coughing into her hand. Sasuke and Sai looked intrigued for a moment before brushing away the explanation as their sensei being typically vague. Will you be joining us today, Namikaze-san? Sai asked, smiling at Naruto. Me? No. Naruto bounced on the balls of her feet before glancing at Kakashi from the corner of her eye. I'm just here to keep your sensei company. So I don't have to spar with you? Sakura asked, not managing to disguise her hope. Naruto had dropped in on their training before and had sparred with Sakura in an attempt to show the younger girl just how far she had to go before she could consider herself a true ninja. Needless to say, the lesson had been learned and Sakura still carried the bruises to prove it. Actually, I was hoping to take a little of Kakashi's time to do just that, Naruto said. It's been a while since I've had a worthy opponent, and maybe your team could get a taste for what they're training towards. Her last words were directed towards Kakashi, who turned to look at her, wariness evident in his body language. He took a moment to think over the offer, certain that Naruto would have ulterior motives, and, sure enough, those motives were made obvious when Kakashi noticed the way Sasuke had straightened at the mention of a fight between him and Naruto. The youngest Uchiha was temperamental and expected to progress faster than he had been doing thus far. It wasn't surprising that Naruto had noticed, and it also wasn't surprising that she was looking out for Sasuke by giving him a goal to work towards other than catching up to Itachi. Naruto, of all people, knew exactly how futile an exercise that would be. Sasuke was talented, extremely so, but he wasn't a 13-year-old Anbu captain. Okay, Kakashi easily agreed, but if I win then you have to agree to a welcome back party. Fine. Naruto crossed her arms over her chest and raised a challenging eyebrow at her oldest friend, if you win. Oh, Minato let his annoyance paint his features. eyebrows furrowing into a scowl as he watched the village council. Let me get this straight, he said. First you forced me into exiling a 6-year-old girl for a decade, and now that she's back you want to strip her of shinobi status. The same girl who wiped the floor with all 5 of the Jonin you handpicked to test her abilities upon her return. The issue with the Kyuubi is still unresolved, Kaharu Udatane replied, her hands folded neatly on top of the table. The girl has to be monitored, for the village's safety. My daughter, Minato sneered, is one of the most gifted ninja this village has ever seen and a true asset, in every possible way. Hokage-sama, I don't think, another member of the council started to speak but was quickly cut off by the glare Minato leveled his way. Fortunately for me, what you think is irrelevant. Minato forced his expression back into one of neutrality, and took a deep breath to regain control of himself. This council no longer has any input into matters concerning the ninja of Konoha and exists in an advisory capacity only. On this matter, your advice is unwanted and uncalled for. Murmurs of outrage ran through the assembly, but Minato quelled them with a look, something he had become very good at over the past decade, before sweeping from the meeting hall, his coat billowing out behind him. Thankfully for the people who had appointments with their Hokage later that day, Minato's anger did not last for long. The council were an annoyance, but they no longer had the power to force his hand, and that knowledge, more than anything, was what enabled him to calm down. Cocking his head, Minato smiled as a dim flare of chakra, thick and familiar, brushed against his senses and he quickened his steps. Kakashi was in a sparring with a very worthwhile opponent if the chakra he was expending was anything to go by. Minato had a very good idea as to who exactly that opponent was. He arrived at the training grounds in time to see Naruto jump into what would have been a devastating roundhouse kick had Kakashi, with his Sharingan blazing, not back-flipped out of the way. The two flew towards each other, their kunai meeting in a loud clang of metal and shower of sparks. Kakashi stabbed his kunai towards Naruto's face, but she ducked under it and aimed for his torso. Body flickering out of the way, Kakashi appeared behind Naruto, his kunai inches away from her neck. Launching into a forward roll, Naruto pushed chakra at her feet and flew into the air, using her momentum to turn and face her friend once more. Her leg was already flying towards Kakashi, and this time she made contact and her foot impacted solidly against his stomach. The power behind the kick caused Kakashi to stumble backwards, and Naruto was on him an instant later, launching into a flurry of kicks with such smooth transitions that Minato felt more than just paternal pride. After all, not just any ninja could get Kakashi on the defensive like that. She's good, isn't she? Minato said, and the 3 genin in front of him jumped, turning to face him with startled eyes. None of them had realized he was watching. Neither did they know that there were Jonin and Anbu all around the clearing drawn by the flares of chakra. Hokage-sama. Sakura managed to squeak out a greeting. We didn't know you were here. Have they been sparring for long? Minato asked, ignoring the slightly obvious statement and smiling to put the children at ease. It's been approximately 20 minutes, Hokage-sama, Sai said, his head swinging from left to right as he tried to keep track of the 2 older ninjas' movements. Sasuke and Sakura were in a similar predicament as they followed the sound of metal clashing together of the rush of wind from the speed of Naruto and Kakashi's movements, unable to spot the ninja themselves. Naturally, Minato had no such problems, and he whistled as Kakashi somehow managed to dodge Naruto's drop kick, the follow-up punch and the preceding spinning kick to his jaw before reaching forward to ruffle Naruto's hair. She promptly grabbed his wrist and tossed him over her shoulder, but Kakashi landed on 2 feet, sprang into a new attack, and the spar started afresh. It was almost half an hour later that Kakashi's body flickered behind Naruto and gently pulled on a few strands of hair. She whirled around to face him only to find that he'd covered his Sharingan once more and his visible eye was curved into a smile. Relaxing out of her stance, she reached up and flicked his nose through the material of his mask before skipping up to Minato and the genin, hair mussed and breathing harder than normal. Papa. Naruto's smile was wide. You're done already. I expected the council to take up most of your day. It turned out that what they wanted to discuss wasn't that important after all. Minato shrugged then smiled at her. You've gotten fast, Naru. Not as fast as you. Naruto shrugged before linking her hands together behind her back and gazing imploringly up at her father. Speaking of which, when are we gonna start training together? Soon enough, Naru-chan, Minato grinned. Soon enough. Unless it's, like, tomorrow or right now even then no, Papa, it's not soon enough. Demanding aren't you, Naru-chan? Kakashi teased. Want me to kick your ass, again, Kaka-kun? Naruto teased back, her voice sugary and smile false. That fight was a draw, Kakashi reminded her. And yet you're the only one with bruises, Naruto scoffed, flipping her hair over her shoulders. I can still give you some if you'd like, Kakashi offered, I just didn't think you'd want your face messed up. I'll mess up your face, Hatake. Naruto sneered only to find that Kakashi was already immersed in Ika paradise. You say something, Naruto. Kakashi blinked and blood rushed into Naruto, face with the force of her anger. Sasuke, Sakura and Sai watched on with more than a little confusion as Naruto chased Kakashi around the training grounds, more worked up now that she had ever been over the course of their hour-long spar. Those two won't ever change, Minato chuckled. If there was one thing Maida Guy and Naruto had in common was that they hated to be ignored. Come on, you three, Minato said to the genin. Kakashi will probably be evading Naruto for at least a couple of hours and I'm sure Iruka could use a hand at the academy. With one last look at the indistinguishable blob on the horizon that their sensei had become, the genin trio obediently trudged after Minato. After all, one simply did not say no to their Hokage. He what? Naruto stared at her father, shock and disbelief etched clearly across her features. He killed his clan, Naruto. Minato massaged his temples to fend off the oncoming headache. The whole operation was Itachi's idea. He knew that the Uchihas could not be rehabilitated and news of Akatsuki had just started to reach us. He said that being a missing nin would provide the perfect cover for him to infiltrate the organization. This was Itachi's idea. Naruto sat back in her seat, stunned. Seriously? Yes. Minato looked every inch the Hokage he was. I am deadly serious. Well damn, Naruto blinked. Does Sasuke know? Yes. Minato nodded. That's the reason he's so intense. It's his ambition to help Itachi bring down Madara. Uchiha Madara. It was Naruto's turn to rub at her temples. That old man is really causing problems. Far too many problems, Minato agreed. So much so that I'm starting to worry about Itachi's safety. Why? Naruto's eyes narrowed as she looked at her father. I mean, hasn't he managed all these years? Yes, Minato nodded, he's managed, but he sounds far too old for 17. Sounds. Naruto's brow scrunched up in confusion. How exactly have you two been communicating, Papa? Through these bracelets, Minato said holding up his wrist to show Naruto the onyx band that encircled it. Itachi has one just like this. I've put a seal on both that, when we channel chakra through it, allows us to speak to each other. Itachi makes contact whenever he is free and my bracelet will heat up slightly, telling me that he wishes to speak. If I am able to talk I will also channel chakra into the bracelet, opening the connection. If not, Itachi merely waits a minute before cutting the connection. It's been highly effective so far. I'm sure, Naruto murmured, eyes a little wide at her father's ingenuity. But we're getting off topic, Minato continued. Lately Itachi's been sounding tired and far too old for his age. I'm concerned about him, Naruto. Naruto nodded in agreement. After all, Itachi had been 13 when he'd killed his entire clan, then gone undercover with the most dangerous missing nin the hidden nations had ever seen, and remained undercover, with no backup, for the past 4 years. It was enough to break even the most hardened of ninja. Do you want me to meet with him? Naruto asked. There had to be reason her father was telling her this after all. I know it's only been a month, Naru, regret colored Minato's gaze, but there are few ninja who aren't deathly afraid of Itachi, fewer still who could stand up to a member of Akatsuki and, of those, only 3 people other than yourself I would trust with such a secret. Tsunade's needed at the hospital, Jiraiya's on a recon mission and out of contact and Kakashi is on that C rank with his team, Naruto replied, nodding her head in understanding. I get it. I knew you would, Minato smiled. I just need you to be prepared at a moment's notice. Itachi's lifestyle is unpredictable. That's an understatement. Naruto laughed but stood to leave, dropping a kiss on her father's cheek as she did so. I'll be prepared, Papa. Believe it. Minato merely laughed, taking the opportunity to pull Naruto into a brief hug before shooing her out of his office. The smile on his face lingered even as the door closed behind her. It was difficult, at times, to reconcile the memory of his mischievous 6-year-old with the confident ninja Naruto had become, but even without the aid of parental bias Minato was quick to recognize exactly what an asset Naruto was to the village. Still, he had missed so much and pretty soon Naruto would start dating and his time with her would be even more limited. Resolve tightening the corners of his mouth, Minato started on his paperwork with renewed vigor. It was time for him to personally oversee Naruto's training and, by the time he was done with her, his daughter would be one of the most feared ninja in the shinobi nations. Oh, he made no sound as he vaulted from one tree to another, finding available branches with ease. Itachi's hair fluttered unbound behind him and he had long ago discarded the Akatsuki cloak. Its pattern was distinctive and made for some of the worst camouflage he'd ever seen. Perhaps it was to make escaping harder should anyone ever prove to be insane enough to betray the Akatsuki. If that was the reason behind the hideous red clouds, then Itachi had to admit that he was less than impressed. Betraying the Akatsuki was exactly what he was in the process of doing, and the cloak had been disgustingly easy to get rid of. Catching Kisame off guard had also proven easier than Itachi had expected. In fact, the hardest part had been summoning the fortitude to stare Kisame in the eyes long enough to activate the genjutsu. The man had a seriously disturbing gaze and, coming from the man that was credited with killing his entire clan before he could fully hit puberty, that was really saying something. Now all Itachi had to do was get to a secure location where he could contact the Hokage and await an extraction team. If Itachi had had his way, he would have kept his cover and continued to stay with Akatsuki. Unfortunately, Zetsu was not the spymaster for the most elite missing nin organization in the world by the grace of his good looks. Itachi had utilized every trick in the book, every bit of training and skill he could muster to keep his cover, and he had not been found out. However, Zetsu was starting to get suspicious, and even that was more than Itachi could afford. Besides, Namikaze-san was back in Konoha now and under her father's watchful eye. Anyone that wanted her would have to go through him first. Staying with the Akatsuki meant almost certain death for Itachi because Zetsu was relentless once the seeds of doubt had been planted in his mind. Making his escape now, with minimal chance of conflict, was Itachi's safest option. Besides, he had promised Sasuke he would come back alive. It was just then that Deidara and Sasori appeared in front of him and Itachi came to a smooth halt, his face impassive even though he was mentally cursing up a storm. So much for minimal conflict. Oh, a light sheen of perspiration covered her body and a pleasant ache, the evidence of a good workout, throbbed through her muscles. Hinata pushed back damp tendrils of hair from her eyes and surveyed the practice dummy. She had hit a fair amount of tenketsu but was nowhere near the level of proficiency her father deemed acceptable. Hinata's shoulders sagged as she sighed before she steeled herself and tried again. Unknown to Hinata, someone was crouched on a tree branch above her, watching her train. The wind tossed Naruto's hair around her face and she rested a hand against the tree trunk for balance, the other one lying across her bent knees. Hiashi-san had been one of Naruto's early tutors and she had found him to be strict and demanding, conditions that Naruto thrived under. Hinata, however, did not. She had visited him yesterday to formally announce her return and re-establish their acquaintance, and that was when Hiashi had mentioned the trouble Hinata was having with the weight of expectations placed on her shoulders. Hiashi had been the most outspoken of her father's supporters when the council had called for her banishment, and Naruto had no doubt that he had remained a friend to her father in the years that she had been gone. There was little she could do to repay such a kindness, but helping his daughter was a good start. Pushing off the branch, Naruto vaulted into the air and landed silently in front of the startled Hyuga heiress with no more fanfare than the cloud of dust kicked up by her landing. Hinata, Naruto greeted, "Good morning." Gee, good morning Namikaze-san, Hinata replied, quickly dipping into a bow. My father is called Namikaze-san. Naruto made a face before smiling at the younger girl, please just call me Naruto. Very well, Naruto, Hinata said, blushing with pride as she realized she didn't stutter. You're doing solo training? Naruto half asked, acting as if he hadn't spent the last half hour watching the girl. I used to train with a Hyuga, you know. Before I left the village. I heard Namikaze-san, I mean Naruto, I heard that Naruto-san was genin by the age of 6, Hinata answered, averting her eyes in embarrassment. Namikaze Naruto was confident and beautiful and so perfect that Hinata was feeling more than a little intimidated. Yes, I was. But mostly because I had excellent tutors. She fell silent and regarded Hinata for a moment before continuing. I don't claim to be an excellent tutor, but I can help you train if you want. Why you want to help me? Hinata's eyes widened with surprise. Why? Why not? Naruto shrugged. You're a ninja of Konoha and so am I. We should help each other be the best we can be, don't you think? Stunned, Hinata could do nothing but gape at Naruto for a few moments. I wouldn't want to be an imposition, she eventually managed to say. Nonsense. Naruto laughed. It's no imposition at all. Let's start with the basics, shall we? And that was how, when Kurenai arrived at the grounds an hour later to oversee Team 8's combined training, she happened upon a sight that was riveting enough to keep even Kiba quiet. Both Kiba and Shino had already arrived and were watching Hinata throw everything she had at Naruto, and to say that Hinata had hidden depths was an understatement. She was currently attacking Naruto with the sort of single-minded focus that was reserved for the Uchiha Sasuke fan club when attempting to track down their idol. Her eyes narrowed as she flew towards Naruto, Byakugan activated and hand positioned to do devastating damage to Naruto's chakra circulation. Naruto easily evaded the strike, leading Hinata on a chase that gave some interesting insight into Hinata's flexibility. It wasn't long, however, before Naruto called a stop to the spar by simply relaxing out of her fighting stance, prompting Hinata to do the same. Good work, Hinata. Naruto beamed, slinging an arm around the younger girl's shoulders and steering her towards her team. I think you've given Kurenai-san a lot to think about. Most definitely, Kurenai agreed, and, while Kiba and Shino bombarded Hinata with questions, she tilted her head to the side, gesturing that she wanted to speak to Naruto in private. Hinata is not the only one who's given me something to think about, Kurenai continued. I didn't realize that the woman who managed to assimilate the nine-tailed fox's chakra into her own network would be so short on sparring partners that she would resort to cornering genin. Oh, it's nothing like that, Naruto laughed. Hiashi-san was one of my tutors before the exile, and he mentioned to me the other day that Hinata had trouble believing in herself. He was a big help to my father while I was gone, and I figured the least I could do is spend a little time with Hinata. Besides, Naruto's smile softened as she glanced at the genin. Hinata is a talented girl. She has the potential to be a truly amazing ninja, and if we, as senior ninja, don't help our youth realize their potential, then who will? Kurenai was silent for a moment, assimilating everything had said, but she eventually sighed and let go of the tension that was stiffening her back and shoulders. You truly are your father's daughter, Namikaze-san, she said. Thank you. Naruto beamed like it was the biggest compliment Kurenai could have given her. Oh wait. I have to go now, but is it alright if I kept up these sessions with Hinata? I realize I should have asked you first, but Naruto continued to speak but was cut off by the Genjutsu master. It's more than alright, Naruto, Kurenai waved away the apology. As long as it doesn't cut into team training or exhaust her too much. I'll make sure no to. Naruto smiled and waved goodbye, her blonde hair swaying behind her as she walked away. Kurenai smiled and shook her head. She had heard many things about the former Jinchuriki, but, given that the girl had been in exile, she had waved most of them off as myth. How could anyone know that her eyes were red and her teeth resembled fangs if nobody had seen her in years? It wasn't surprising that most of the gossip had turned to be incorrect and or simply outrageous. What was surprising was that Namikaze Naruto was as well adjusted and, well, normal as she was when she had spent her formative years on the run. It showed exceptional strength of character and, in that way, Kurenai hadn't been joking. Namikaze Naruto really was her father's daughter. Oh, Minato sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose as the second dog summon in the space of as many days poofed out of sight. Of all the C-rank missions he had assigned, this had to be the one that ended up being a disaster waiting to happen. As it turned out, only one person, other than himself of course, would be able to reach Kakashi in time to be of any help. Thankfully, he knew exactly where she was. To say Naruto was surprised when her father came striding into Ichiraku's, face stern, was an understatement. What's wrong? She asked, dropping her chopsticks and pulling out her wallet. It didn't take a genius to realize that lunchtime was over. Kakashi's run into trouble, Minato replied. The client lied about the rank of his mission and he is currently engaged in combat with Momochi Zabuza. Sasuke, Sai and Sakura are with him. Ah hell. Naruto groaned and started checking her belt and weapons pouch to make sure she was properly armed. Okay. Well, I repacked my emergency scrolls yesterday so I can leave now. Good. Minato nodded. Make haste and be careful. Yes, sir. Naruto saluted. But you realize that when we get back you're gonna have to teach me the Hiraishin. This would go so much faster with it. And with that she shot a cheeky grin over her shoulder before channeling chakra to her feet and disappearing in a blur of blonde hair and a gust of wind so strong it blew a few leaves off of nearby trees. I most definitely do, Minato murmured the answer to himself before turning away and making his way back to his office. There was nothing more he could do now except hope Naruto would reach Kakashi in time. Little could he know just how close Naruto had cut it. She sped into the clearing, taking in the way Haku was hiding in the trees, the genin were cowering below him and Zabuza had Kakashi trapped in a water prison. Then Naruto kicked Zabuza in the back of his head and vaulted over him to land between him and Kakashi before anyone had realized she had arrived. What the? You? Zabuza snarled as he righted himself and noticed Naruto glaring at him. Brat, where the hell did you come from? Aren't you supposed to be dead? You know for a demon you're pretty slow at recognizing other demons. Naruto said, her voice level as she lifted a hand to examine her nails. I know you're old but surely you recognized the host of the nine-tailed fox when you saw her. I left you with a kunai in your gut. Zabuza growled. What part of Jinchuriki don't you understand? Naruto scoffed. It'll take more than a piece of metal in my stomach to kill me. Also, Haku, you can come out now and make this overgrown ass see sense. I don't care what your bitch, Zabuza replied, but let me assure you that if a kunai didn't kill you then my sword cutting of your head definitely will. And with that he swung at Naruto, a series of devastating and fluid strikes that, 4 years ago, would have had her instantly on the defense. Now she simply drew the katana she had released from its sealing scroll on the way here and matched Zabuza stroke for stroke. Well, not really. He was formerly one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist after all, and Naruto was more of a ninjutsu than a kenjutsu type ninja, but she knew enough to make it seem like she was matching him stroke for stroke. The 3 genin relaxed, thankful that aid had arrived, and Tazuna watched the new arrival with interest. That short skirt displayed quite a lot of skin after all. Before long Zabuza started to push Naruto back and she swore and flipped back out of the way. Speeding forward once more, she channeled chakra into her sword before swinging it in a short, horizontal arc in front of her. A gust of wind burst from the metal with enough strength to temporarily blind Zabuza, and he squinted against the force of nature. Taking advantage of his distraction, Naruto sped forward, aiming a devastating strike at Zabuza's neck. He dodged just in time to avoid getting decapitated, ducking under the swing and landing a hit to her solar plexus. She immediately doubled over in pain, and Zabuza followed up the hit with one that sent her flying backwards, her back colliding painfully against a tree before she collapsed to the ground, breathless and stunned. Zabuza grinned, bloodthirsty and feral, and lifted his sword to attack. Before he could, however, a foot collided with his abdomen, knocking him backwards, and Kakashi appeared in front of Zabuza, body tensed and Sharingan blazing. Behind him, Naruto picked herself up and sheathed her sword with one hand while forming a Rasengan with the other. "Haku," Naruto said, "you really need to come down now, or Zabuza's gonna find out why the Chidori and Rasengan should never be used together." Taking the verbal cue, Kakashi clutched at his wrist, steadying his palm as he gathered chakra, and moments later the clearing was filled with the sound of 1,000 birds. A slim figure appeared in front of Zabuza, a mask pulled back to show doe eyes and delicate facial features. "Hello Naruto-san," Haku greeted, bowing slightly and seemingly oblivious to the killing intent that was crippling Tazuna and the genin. "Haku," Naruto stepped forward and stood by Kakashi's side. "You want to tell us what you're doing here? And why are you still hanging around this bastard?" she asked, jerking her thumb towards Zabuza. "We have been hired to dispose of Tazuna-san," Haku replied. "And as for your second question, you already know the answer to that, Naruto-san." Naruto hummed her agreement. "It still kinda sucks that you're not on our side. I don't want to have to hurt you, you know. And I do not want to hurt you, Naruto-san." Haku's regret was obvious in both his expression and his voice. "Oh, don't worry," Naruto replied, "you won't." And with that she darted forward, too fast for anyone but Kakashi to follow, and he could only do so with the Sharingan, and hit a bundle of nerves on Haku's neck that had him crumpling to the ground, Zabuza following soon after. Kakashi blinked, taken aback by the sudden change in scenario, before relaxing out of his stance, the Chidori fizzling away. "Naruto," he sighed and let himself sag against a nearby tree. God, he was out of shape. "You couldn't have done that sooner. Where would the fun be in that?" Naruto smirked, but it faded as she looked at the men lying prone at her feet, hesitance flashing through her eyes. "Haku's a good kid, you know." Her voice was almost too low for Kakashi to catch. "It's a shame he ended up with Zabuza of all people." "Naru," Kakashi sighed. "You know what needs to be done." "Yes." Naruto sighed and drew her katana once more. "I do." And with that she swung her sword once, twice, and the sound of metal slicing through flesh and bone filled the clearing. Sakura made a sound, like she was going to be sick, and when Kakashi glanced over he saw that Sai and Sasuke were pale and shaking. Naruto looked down at her clothes, the spray of blood decorating her skirt and legs, and shrugged off her vest to wipe off the worst of the stains. When she was done she sealed the vest into a storage scroll and turned to face the genin. "Why you killed them?" Sakura stared at Naruto, eyes wide and face pale. "But why? I mean, they were defeated, right? They couldn't fight back. Why did you have to kill them?" "Listen up." It was Kakashi who spoke. "Being a ninja means protecting your village and your teammates, but most of all, it means protecting your client. Those two were after Tazuna and they would stop at nothing to complete their mission. We had no choice but to retaliate. Sasuke and Sai Stilled looked a little pale and queasy but nodded at his words, seeing the truth behind them. Sakura, however, looked like she wanted to protest, so Kakashi continued before she could do so. The life of a ninja is a difficult one and the right choice is not often an easy choice. There's no room on this job for softness, Sakura, so I would advise that you use the rest of this trip to evaluate your options and think on whether this is a career you truly want. Sakura fell quiet at that, her eyes clouding over as Kakashi's words registered, and she sighed, nodding her head before turning away. Okay. Kakashi spoke again after a moment. Let's get Tazuna home. Mobilized into action by his words, the genin and Tazuna resumed their journey, expressions grave and shoulders sagging a little over the day's event, and Kakashi took a step forward to follow them before passing out. Naruto swore, darting forward to catch her friend before he could hit the ground. Sensei. Sakura's eyes widened as she turned to see what had happened. What happened to him? He's all right, Naruto grunted and, with some effort, shifted Kakashi so that he was draped across her back, his arms hanging over her shoulders. He's just exhausted. Heaving herself upright, Naruto exhaled under Kakashi's weight before turning to the rest of the group. Come on then, she said. The sooner we get there, the sooner I can put his heavy ass down. That elicited smiles, albeit small ones, from the genin, and the group started forward once more, Naruto resolving to start some weight training as Kakashi grew heavier by the minute. The panting gasps of fresh air he took stung as they passed down his throat and into his lungs. Itachi placed a hand against a tree and let himself slump slightly, taking a moment to catch his breath after the battle. Sasori and Deidara on their own were relatively easily handled. Together they were a formidable team that took Itachi longer than he'd like to defeat. All this time spent on alert, watching his back and front, second-guessing everything he said, and everything that was said to him had slowly worn him down until his senses and reaction times were dulled slightly from sheer exhaustion. Still, even if it had taken longer than it should have, Itachi had overcome both Sasori and Deidara with few injuries other than that to his stamina. Sighing, he straightened and, pushing Chakra to his feet, disappeared into the trees. It would be safer to go the rest of the way above ground. It took only a few more hours for Itachi to reach his safe house, and he immediately activated the extensive array of seals and traps around the premises before escaping inside and channeling Chakra into the engraved silver bracelet that circled his wrist. The response was, thankfully, immediate. Itachi, the Hokage's disembodied voice filled the room, as calm and level as it always was. Hokage-sama, Itachi greeted. I am at the safe house. There was silence for a moment as Minato digested the news. You got away okay? He asked once he had. Yes, Hokage-sama, Itachi replied. Sasori and Deidara intercepted me, but I got past them. Are you badly injured? The note of concern in Minato's voice was genuine, and Itachi found himself responding, shoulders relaxing as he rested his weight against a wall. No, Itachi said. My chakra levels are low, but I shall recover overnight. Good, Minato said. Stay where you are. I'll get word to Naruto and she'll be there to escort you as soon as possible. Understood, Itachi replied, nodding even though Minato was unable to see the motion. Take care of yourself, Itachi, Minato added. Yes, Hokage-sama. Itachi cut off the chakra supply to his bracelet and ventured further into the house, heading straight for the bathroom. A hot shower would go a long way towards helping him unwind. As scalding water massaged his tired muscles, Itachi was helpless to keep his mind from wandering. He had seen Namikaze Naruto only once during her exile, 2 years ago. News had reached Akatsuki that the Nine-Tailed Fox's jailer was in a civilian town in Tea Country, and Itachi had been sent to confirm the sighting and evaluate whether extraction was a possibility. Kisame had yet to join the organization, and so he had been alone. When he had laid eyes on the sunny blonde for the first time in 8 years, she was skipping through the streets, trailed by two of the Sannin. Even at 14, Namikaze Naruto very obviously took after her father. It was obvious in her height, her coloring, and the way she had a smile for everyone, including the street urchin that tried to snatch her purse. Itachi turned off the water and wrung out his hair before wiping himself down. Wrapping the towel around his waist, he padded into the bedroom and slipped into sleep clothes. Soon he would be back in Konoha and everyone would know the truth of what happened that night. How the village would react was uncertain, and Itachi hated dealing with uncertainties, even ones that would only affect him on a superficial basis. It wasn't like he placed faith in popular opinion. Still, he would be with Sasuke again, able to spend time with his brother for the first time in years. He had missed Sasuke's graduation from the academy, but he will be there for the first time he took the Chunin exams and for every milestone thereafter. News of Namikaze Naruto's assimilation of the fox would soon reach Akatsuki, and Madara's plans would be ruined. Besides, if Madara wanted Naruto, he would have to go through the Hokage, and that was a feat that anyone with any sense would be extremely wary of undertaking. No, Madara was not foolish enough to attempt something so idiotic. Even if the Hokage were not around, rumor had it that Naruto had grown into a ninja worthy to be called daughter of the Hokage. She had spent a decade under the tutelage of two of the most legendary ninja to ever live. Kidnapping her would not be easy. There was also, of course, a little problem called Orochimaru. The Snake Sannin was after the Sharingan, and with the Chunin exams being held in Konoha this year, it was obvious what his plan of attack would be. It would not work. The Namikaze family was reunited, Kakashi himself was Sasuke's Jonin sensei, and Itachi would also be back in Konoha. Orochimaru was a dead man walking. A bloodthirsty smile, one befitting a man capable of killing his entire clan, curved Itachi's lips. He had been wanting to end the slimy snake ever since he first mentioned Sasuke in his sly, cunning way. Now it seemed like he would not only get the opportunity, but he would probably have the Hokage's backing as well. Orochimaru really, truly was a dead man walking. Oh, Namikaze Naruto was never ever taking on a genin team. As she watched Sai moan at Sakura for taking too long in the bathroom, who ignored him in favor of flirting with Sasuke, who ignored her in favor of food, she decided that genin were immature and noisy and absolutely the last thing on earth she ever wanted to deal with. Leaving the brats to their squabbling, she collected the used dishes and brought them to the kitchen, where Tsunami greeted her with a smile. "You can leave those there, Naruto," Tsunami said, and the blonde shook her head. "Nonsense," she said as she ran the tap. "You've been very generous, Tsunami-san. The least we could do is clean up after ourselves." "You know," Tsunami's gaze was contemplative as Naruto started to wash Team 7's plates, "children will never learn if they aren't made to do their chores for themselves." "On any other day I would completely agree with you," Naruto replied. "But they've had a rough time of it lately. I think they've earned the right to be kids for a little while." And okay, so she was never gonna take on a genin team. That didn't mean she wouldn't do what she could for three children who had just had a very rude awakening. Naruto might be developing an allergy to pre-teens, but that didn't mean she was heartless. "That's very kind of you," Tsunami smiled. "They're lucky to have you as a mentor, Naruto-chan." "Oh, I don't know about that," Naruto blushed under the combination of praise and endearment. "I do," Tsunami insisted. "And your boyfriend is very lucky to have you too. I hope he knows that." "Boyfriend?" Naruto's brows scrunched in confusion. "The man you arrived with," Tsunami prompted. "Hitaki-san." "Oh, Kakashi." Naruto laughed. "He's not my boyfriend, he's my best friend." Tsunami hummed. "Were it me, I would find it difficult to be just friends with a body like that." Startled laughter escaped Naruto, unbidden, and her eyes widened at the direction the conversation had taken. She wasn't used to being around other women and didn't quite know how to take Tsunami's comments. That being said, Tsunami was only a handful of years older than Naruto, and surely it was okay to talk to her about these things, seeing as Tsunami herself had initiated the conversation. He is very handsome, isn't he? Naruto mused. It's been so long. What has, Naruto? Oh. Naruto blinked and averted her gaze, picking up a discarded cloth and folding it. I was away from the village for a long time, and Kakashi and I only really kept in contact by letters. In fact, I only saw him again for the first time 10 years a few weeks ago. 10 years, Tsunami blinked. That is a long time. She was silent for a moment before speaking again. I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds by saying this, Naruto-chan, but if you wanted to pursue a relationship with Hitaki-san, then perhaps now would be the time to do so. Before it's become too platonic for too long. It would be difficult to change things in such a scenario. I'll definitely think about it, Naruto said after a moment. Thank you for the advice, Tsunami-san. Tsunami smiled at Naruto and nodded her acknowledgement before turning back to her chores. Exiting the kitchen, Naruto paused long enough to order the genin outside to begin warming up. As they left the house, still bickering, she made her way upstairs and into the room Kakashi was sharing with the boys. He was exactly how she'd left him, on his back with his hands folded over his stomach and his chest rising and falling in a reassuringly steady pattern. Naruto had replaced his forehead protector, angling it over his Sharingan, and stripped off his Jonin vest, gloves and sandals. Her footsteps were silent as she crossed the room and dropped to the floor, kneeling beside him in a single, effortless movement. Gathering chakra to her hands, she began a simple diagnostic jutsu Tsunade had taught her. While Naruto would never be a medic nin, her chakra control had improved drastically once the fox was no longer a problem, and she had no problem doing any of the easier medical jutsu. Placing her hands on Kakashi's shoulders, she concentrated on what the jutsu was telling her, looking for remnants of fluid or partially healed muscle that meant Kakashi would be bedridden for a little longer. Her hands glided from his shoulders, down his arms and up again before moving on to his chest, stomach, hips and legs. While his fever had broken and his muscles had fully repaired, there was a tenderness to them that told Naruto that too much activity would be unwise. Technically Kakashi was field ready, but an extra day's rest would do a world of good. Sighing, Naruto cancelled the jutsu and sat back on her haunches, glancing up at Kakashi's face and blinking when she found him awake and looking straight at her. Morning, sleeping beauty, she grinned. Have a nice nap. Naru. Kakashi's voice was hoarse from lack of use and he cleared his throat before continuing. What happened? Well, Naruto pretended to think that over for a moment before dropping the cheerful facade and turning serious blue eyes on Kakashi. What happened is that you have been slacking off on your training. Your chakra levels are too low and you're out of practice with the Sharingan. If the fight with Zabuza had lasted any longer, you would have been seriously injured. As opposed to just napping? Kakashi asked, his visible eyebrow lifting in question. Count yourself lucky that chakra exhaustion is all you're suffering from, Naruto replied. You'd look seriously uncool in front of your genin if all it took was an S-class missing nin to bring you down. Right, Kakashi forced his voice to remain level. Only S-class. Not difficult at all. Naruto smiled and reached out to brush back a few strands of hair that had fallen into Kakashi's visible eye. I'm glad you're alright, she said. And I'm glad you showed up, Kakashi admitted, causing Naruto's smile to turn fond. It was rare for him to drop all pretenses and just say what he meant instead of talking in riddles. Anything in particular you want the little brats to learn today? She asked, knowing that any more sappiness would have him running for the hills. Tree walking, Kakashi replied. All three of them could do with the control exercise. Consider it done, Naruto said as her hand came to rest on his shoulder. You should join us, get some air. Well, If Tsunade's apprentice herself is recommending heir, Kakashi groaned slightly as he pushed himself upright. Who am I to argue? Idiot. Naruto swatted him lightly in the arm before helping him to his feet. My name isn't Shizune. Kakashi merely smiled in response and stumbled to the bathroom to wash up. Shaking her head at his sense of humor, Naruto made her way outside and, by the time Kakashi joined them, all three genin were making their ways up the trees with varying levels of success. How are they doing? He asked as he folded himself down beside her. Not badly, Naruto replied. Sakura's managed to get further up the tree than the boys, mainly because her chakra levels are so low and Sasuke is having more trouble than Sai because his reserves are bigger. He's also improving at a faster pace though. I can see why he was labeled this year's prodigy. And how are they taking the Zabuza saga? Kakashi shifted closer so that their shoulders brushed. With the kind of durability that comes with being a kid, Naruto's smile was a little wistful. Sakura had nightmares the first night, but she's been alright since then, and Sai and Sasuke have tried to put up a stoic facade, but they were also shaken. It doesn't seem to be weighting them down too badly though. That's good, Kakashi murmured. What about you? It's your first assassination, right? Yes. Naruto nodded but didn't look at Kakashi. But it wasn't. It wasn't the first time I've had to take a life. I know, Kakashi sighed. Still, it doesn't get easier. No. Naruto exhaled and let her head rest against Kakashi's shoulder. It doesn't. And so the two of them sat like that, taking and receiving comfort in the manner that only the closest of friends could achieve. Meanwhile, they were not unobserved. Sakura glanced over at the two Jonin as she perched high in a tree, catching her breath. It had been obvious from the start that Kakashi-sensei and Naruto-sensei were close, and it was equally obvious that there were not many people Kakashi-sensei could call friends. Sakura had seen the looks Kakashi-sensei got from the female population of Konoha. He was like the older generation's Sasuke-kun, idolized and lusted after and endlessly praised for his looks and genius. He was also the Hokage's student, and the two had retained a very close bond. That definitely didn't hurt his eligibility. As far as Sakura knew, however, which was basically whatever Ino had managed to ferret out from the village gossips, Kakashi-sensei liked playing hard to get just as much as Sasuke-kun did. Maybe it was a trait all prodigies shared. The thing is, ever since Naruto-sensei had breezed into their lives, and training sessions, Kaka-sensei had seemed lighter. He was on time for training and missions. He didn't have his head perpetually buried in that disgusting book, and he kept up a steady stream of banter with Naruto-sensei when she was around. For friends that had been separated for 10 years, they seemed to share an awful lot of private jokes. Naruto-sensei was bubbly and strict and demanding, and so beautiful that Sakura often felt intimidated by her. She was obviously a strong ninja. Duh. She was the Hokage's daughter, and also she survived a 10-year exile and came out of it with her sanity intact mostly. That had got to count for something. Sakura was a little afraid of Naruto-sensei, but she was also a little in awe of her. Naruto-sensei was everything Sakura wanted to be: capable, confident, and charming. When Naruto-sensei was teaching, Sasuke-kun gave her his full attention, and Sakura wanted that. She wanted to be strong and beautiful so that Sasuke-kun would look at her, would pay attention to her. The only way she could do that is by training more and taking her ninja duties more seriously. And so Sakura jumped from the tree, landing in a crouch and brushing the dust from her clothes before attempting to climb even higher. Kakashi-sensei and Naruto-sensei could cuddle up and make goo-goo eyes at each other all they wanted. Sakura had a prodigy to impress. For such a successful business tycoon, Gato was kind of an imbecile. Naruto sighed, and fought the urge to roll her eyes as the short, portly man waddled towards them, accompanied by a few hundred armed thugs. That he seriously thought that mere thugs could succeed where Zabuza himself had failed was laughable. There's so many of them. Sakura's eyes widened at the prospect of having to fight off all those men. That Naruto scoffed. That's nothing, watch and learn kiddies. Naruto smirked as her fingers twisted into a familiar pattern and hundreds of shadow clones popped into existence, all mirroring her expression. Clones? Sai asked. How is that supposed to help? They're not regular clones, Kakashi explained. They're shadow clones, corporeal and durable and very, very difficult to produce. Can you do them, sensei? Sakura asked and Kakashi nodded the affirmative. So, Sakura raised both eyebrows and placed her hands on her hips. What are you waiting for? It's rude to let your girlfriend do all the work. Kakashi sighed and, for a moment, considered reminding Sakura that Naruto was not his girlfriend. Then he decided that it was too much effort and obligingly formed the required hand seals. A moment later a few hundred Kakashis popped into existence whilst the real one slumped against the bridge, content to sit this one out. The band of renegades took one look at the sudden appearance of so many ninja and took a collective step backward and then another before turning tail and running, leaving Gato staring at their retreating backs with consternation. Naruto's smirk turned deadly as she let her clones dissipate before stalking towards the tycoon who seemed to realize he was in trouble and tried to run. Naruto, of course, was faster and body flickered ahead of him. The look on Gato's face as he glanced up to meet Naruto's cold eyes and bloodthirsty smile was priceless. NN Ninja-san, he stammered, raising both hands in a placating gesture, I have money. Naruto merely rolled her eyes and drew her katana, causing Gato to take a few, hasty steps backwards. Does it look like I want your money? She asked and took a step towards him and then another, causing Gato to scramble back until he was pushed against the railing, glancing nervously over his shoulder at the ocean beneath him. But I can. I have a lot. Gato continued to babble, not able to believe that anyone would actually be able to turn down monetary rewards. Deciding that enough was enough, Naruto let her impatience show and, as Gato's blood drained from his face, jerked forwards as if she were going to attack. Gato screamed and tried to dodge but, unfortunately, his sense of direction left much to be desired and he tumbled straight off of the bridge and into the choppy waters below. Sakura let out a squeal of surprise but quelled under the annoyed glance sent her way by Sasuke and Sai while Naruto peered over the bridge. Her pupils widened to accommodate the distance and low light but she could make out no bubbles that might show Gato survived the fall. A minute passed by in this way and then another and Kakashi joined her at the bridge, scanning for the messy hair or any sign of life. When none appeared, they glanced at each other and traded smiles before turning back to the genin. All right everyone, Tazuna said, relieved that everything had turned out to be so anticlimactic, back to work. And with that, it was business as usual and if the genin noticed that the workers were quicker to smile, their movements lighter than they had been all week, they decided not to comment and merely traded pleased looks before rolling up their metaphorical sleeves and helping with the building. Oh, there was a little boy following them around. He never smiled and was quick to leave the room whenever they entered. His name was Inari and he was Tsunami's son. Sakura tried to talk to him but he just yelled at her, told her that there are no such things as heroes and that they were all going to die for being stupid enough to go up against Gato. Sasuke and Sai scowled at him but Sakura shrank back, unable to deal with so much anger in someone who was so young. I don't know what to do with him, Tsunami confessed when she was alone with Naruto. He's too young to be so jaded. Naruto thought back to 10 years ago, to the fear that had constantly clawed at her and the way it had taken a psychotic little boy with insane levels of potential to shake her from such a state. Children are resilient, Naruto eventually says. Someone just needs to show him how to deal with bullies. And how do you deal with bullies, Naruto-chan? Tsunami asked. She tilted her head as she regarded the younger woman, honestly curious about her answer. By refusing to be bullied, Naruto replied, her eyes glinting and before Tsunami could get her to elaborate, Tazuna was hobbling into the kitchen, rudely inquiring into what was taking so long. After that, the bridge incident happened and Inari's entire outlook seemed to change. He still didn't approach the group, hiding behind trees and around corners and peering at them through wary eyes. Sometimes his confusion was almost palpable, and those were the days that a smile curved Naruto's lips, satisfied and more than a little smug. "Do I want to know?" Kakashi asked on one such occasion. "That depends." Naruto glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "How bored are you right now?" "Not enough to willingly be involved in one of your plans," Kakashi replied, and didn't have to look away from his genin team to know that Naruto was pouting. "I saw Inari trying to practice kenjutsu with a garden rake the other day," Naruto said after a moment's pause. So, Kakashi was clearly confused as to why Naruto felt the need to mention this fact. Lots of kids fancy themselves ninja. But maybe he'd like lessons, nay. Naruto didn't look at Kakashi, choosing instead to stretch her legs out in front of her and prop herself up on her elbows. "The kids had a rough time of it and we're gonna be stuck here for another week at least. What harm could it do?" Kakashi hummed non-committedly, glancing at Naruto out of the corners of his eyes and reading between the lines to what wasn't being said. Everybody in Konoha had marveled over how well-adjusted and friendly Naruto was, how she was confident and capable and seemingly unaffected by her 10-year exile. Kakashi himself had been glad to have his best friend back, albeit an older and therefore much hotter version of the 6-year-old he remembered. In fact, as soon as he'd gotten over his surprise at Naruto reappearing back in Konoha so unexpectedly, Kakashi had realized that he was going to have to play it very, very cool. Naruto had lost none of her childish exuberance and love of life, was still the same whirlwind of mischief and laughter she'd always been. The difference was that those traits were now tempered by the most amazing legs Kakashi had ever seen and breasts that practically made his mouth water. So Kakashi had spent most of his time around Naruto trying to act as normal as possible because Naruto was his friend, first and foremost, and he was just gonna have to force his dick to remember that. As a result, he'd forgotten that for all her smiles and jokes, there was no way Naruto was completely unaffected by her time away. Now, with her face in profile and her eyes trained on a spot in the distance so that Kakashi couldn't properly gauge the expression in them, Kakashi was realizing that Naruto would find it very easy indeed to empathize with a lonely, scared, heartbroken child like Inari. "No harm at all, Naru," Kakashi eventually said. "In fact, I think it's a great idea." Naruto did look at him then, her expression unguarded and a grateful smile curving her lips. Kakashi's smile was hidden beneath his face mask, but it was no less genuine because of that. For all the changes 10 years had wrought, Naruto's biggest strength remained unchanged. For all that she had suffered, and for all the cruelty she'd had to face from so young an age, Naruto still believed in the good in people. She still believed that even the most sadistic of people could change if they truly wanted to. She still believed in redemption. In the ways that mattered, Naruto hadn't changed one bit. She still truly was her father's daughter. It was at that precise moment that a messenger bird from Konoha arrived, landing on Naruto's outstretched leg with a loud squawk. Kakashi and Naruto both blinked in surprise, but instinct had Naruto reaching for the scroll attached to the bird's leg before she was even aware of doing so. The bird flew away as Naruto unfurled the message and Kakashi leaned over her shoulder to read, his fingers clenching into a fist as he did so. "Well," Naruto said as she stood and brushed herself off. "I guess you'll have to finish things off here without me, Kakashi." "Finish what off?" Kakashi said. "All that's left to do is wait. You get all the fun, Naru." "That's because I'm faster than you, Kaka-kun," Naruto teased, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She was already focusing on the mission that lay ahead. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Naru-chan," Kakashi replied as he also stood and scratched the back of his neck as he regarded his friend, feeling like he should say something more but unable to find the words. "Well, I guess I'll see you back in Konoha then," Naruto smiled. "Don't run into any more S-class missing nin, alright?" I won't be there to save your ass. Acting on impulse, Naruto rose onto the tips of her toes to press a kiss to Kakashi's cloth-covered cheek before gracing him with another, smaller smile. Take care, Kakashi. And with that she had turned and raced away in a whirl of blonde hair and the clean, sharp scent of soap, leaving Kakashi gaping behind her. Never in his life had he been as glad for his mask as he was at that moment, because try as he might, Kakashi just couldn't seem to wipe the broad and blatantly delighted grin from his face. Naruto, too, was smiling as she left Wave, channeling chakra to her feet as she ran, so that she was nothing but a brief and unexpected gust of wind to the people she passed. Itachi's hideout was somewhere between Wave and Konoha, and it took Naruto 18 hours, at top speed, to reach it. When she finally jerked to a stop in front of a small, nondescript cottage, it was to find that Itachi was already embroiled in battle with two members of Akatsuki, Kakuzu and Hidan. So much for the place being secure. Naruto didn't hesitate before leaping into the battle, landing in front of Itachi and releasing a wind jutsu to push Kakuzu and Hidan back a bit. Don't let them get any of your blood, Naruto-san, Itachi said in lieu of greeting, and Naruto nodded her understanding. She'd heard of Hidan and his religion. What's this? Hidan said, cocking his head to the side and grinning at Naruto, the nine-tailed girl. Well, this must be our lucky day. Leader's gonna love us for bringing in both Itachi and the fox. Don't get ahead of yourself, Naruto sneered and tossed her hair over her shoulder. You're gonna have to catch me first, asshole. Now, Hidan teased, ladies shouldn't use such language. Didn't your father teach you better? And with that he charged forward, scythe poised and a cruel smirk twisting his lips. Naruto easily evaded and found she had to continue to do so. The scythe was massive, but Hidan wielded it with ease and with a dexterity that belied its size and weight. Still, Hidan's formidability lay mainly in his immortality and the jutsu he trapped his opponents in. Naruto had never faced an immortal opponent before, and she was curious about just how far his so-called invincibility went. With that plan of attack in mind, Naruto waited for an opportunity to slip under Hidan's guard. Sure enough, such a moment occurred mere minutes later. Hidan was undoubtedly a strong opponent, but he was also somebody who was accustomed to facing people who were unaware of his jutsu. Naruto herself would not have known that he needed her blood had Itachi not warned her, because why else would he say something so ominous? So before long Hidan grew impatient and aimed a rather reckless attack at Naruto. A smirk twisted her lips and she ducked under the scythe, hair flying behind her as she gathered chakra into her hand and pushed a Rasengan into his heart. Hidan's eyes widened in surprise and he glanced down at the gaping wound in his chest as Naruto jumped back, putting some distance between them. Her brow furrowed into a frown when Hidan didn't collapse and instead traced the edges of his wound before ripping a long piece of fabric from his cloak to bandage the area. Dumb bitch, Hidan growled as he finished and glared at Naruto. You're gonna pay for that. Naruto merely shrugged, feigning nonchalance, but her mind was working overtime. So he wasn't affected by otherwise fatal injuries, even ones to heart. Maybe the guy really was immortal after all, or as close as humans could get to being so, anyway. As the fight resumed, anger fueling Hidan's movements and adrenaline giving him added speed so that Naruto had an even harder time than before ensuring she didn't get cut. Naruto ran through scenarios in her mind and tried to find a way to get around Hidan's resistance to injury. Out of the corner of her eyes she saw Itachi use a lightning jutsu to shatter one of the masks on Kakuzu's chest. There was one more mask left. Hidan took advantage of her momentary distraction to swipe at her neck with his scythe, but Naruto ducked under it and pushed her hands forward, calling a wind jutsu to push Hidan back. It bought her mere moments, but it was enough for Naruto to regain her focus once more. Naruto couldn't say how long the battle raged except that she was still going strong when Itachi suddenly flickered behind Hidan, hands ablaze and Sharingan spinning. Lips curving into a wicked smirk, Naruto attacked at the same time and Hidan barely managed to dodge them both. We need to bury him, Itachi told her and Naruto nodded her acknowledgement. I can dig the hole, she offered and Itachi glanced at her before increasing the ferocity of his attacks, giving her time to do just that. Earth jutsu were some of Naruto's favorite after wind and it wasn't long before she had dug a deep hole in the ground and laced it with some of her father's strongest chakra-suppressing seals. She also added some for increased gravity just to be safe. Once trapped, Hidan would barely be able to blink. Naruto rejoined the fight and Itachi left without being prompted to cast a genjutsu over the trap. From there it only took more teamwork to get Hidan in place and Naruto sealed the trap with a flourish and set up seals to prevent people digging up the ground, both manually and with jutsu, while Itachi set up more genjutsu to trap people in imaginary fights with some of Konoha's best shinobi. There was a moment of awkwardness when they were done. Naruto and Itachi looked at each other, unsure of what to say, but that was broken when Itachi swayed slightly on his feet. To most people the momentary lapse would have been barely noticeable, but Naruto had become adept at reading body language and smile curved her lips even as she shook her head. What is with you prodigies and your shitty stamina? She asked but didn't give Itachi time to reply. Instead she tossed him some soldier pills and sealed Kakuzu's body into a scroll as he took them. Then the pair were on the move once more. Naruto, whilst on full alert, kept up a steady stream of chatter that Itachi responded to with the odd grunt or hum of acknowledgement. To most people they looked like a shinobi team returning from a successful mission and, fortunately, they reached Konoha without further incident. Night had fallen hours ago and the forest around the village was eerily silent, broken only by the sounds of nature. Naruto stopped just out of view of the gate and placed a hand on Itachi's shoulder before body flickering them up to her house. Her father was still awake and Naruto grinned as he turned to face them, relief visible on his face. Welcome back, Minato smiled and Naruto's own grin widened as she hugged her father then skipped toward the kitchen, complaining loudly about how thirsty she was. Itachi bowed, low and formal to his Hokage, but something inside him loosened when Minato laughed and waved away the need for formalities. Father and daughter together were a force to be reckoned with and Itachi found himself ushered into a chair and a steaming drink and plate of food was placed in front of him while Naruto reported on their mission. It wasn't quite the feeling of coming home. Itachi suspected that would only happen when he was able to talk to Sasuke once more. Instead it was the feeling of acceptance, of being able to let down his guard, of knowing that there was no need to keep up pretenses. Itachi slept well that night, secure in the knowledge that there was no need to keep watch.